You know, they say time heals all wounds, but I found that's not quite right. Time doesn't heal. It teaches you how to live with the scars. At 72, I think I've got more scars on my soul than I have wrinkles on my face. Most of them came from the big, bad world of business. The boardroom battles I fought and won to build VA Holdings from the ground up. But the deepest scar, the one that still aches on a cold night, that one was carved by my only child, my daughter, Sophia. My daughter sold my late husband's house and his car to bankroll a lavish trip to Europe, all while she was ashamed of my job as a janitor. She saw me as a burden, something to be hidden away. She had no idea that the poor old janitor she looked down on was the powerful, anonymous owner of the only corporation that could save her from ruin. Now, this isn't just some simple story of getting even. This is the story of a mother's final lesson, a lesson in humility, in respect, and in the true meaning of wealth, taught in the coldest boardroom in New York City. When she came begging for help, she was about to get the shock of her life. The world, you see, only knows me by two powerful initials, VA. They know the empire I built from scratch, but they don't know my face. And that was my choice. After my husband Alexander passed away, I stepped behind the curtain. I handed the day-to-day operations over to Mr. Davies, my most loyal associate. I could have retired to a penthouse overlooking Central Park, but that kind of quiet, it suffocates me. I needed to feel connected to life, to the ordinary people who are the real heart of my company. So I created Vicky, a quiet, unassuming cleaning lady who works in the very skyscraper that bears my initials. It was the perfect cover, a way for me to watch my world without being consumed by it. And more importantly, it was the only way I could stay close to my daughter. Sophia, my girl, she's all I have left. Beautiful, brilliant, and proud to a fault. She's the CEO of a fashion brand, Vance Atelier, a company she boasted of building with her own two hands. What she doesn't know is that it was me, through an anonymous trust, who was her first angel investor, the one who laid the foundation for her dream. I did it quietly, you see, because I wanted her to believe in her own strength. But maybe I was wrong. Easy success planted a dangerous seed in her heart, a contempt for anything that wasn't glamorous, and that included her own mother. To Sophia, Vicky wasn't her mother. She was an embarrassment, a burden to be tucked away. I got used to it, or at least I told myself I did. I always believed that she was just putting on a show, that deep down she still loved me. I thought I could feel it in her daily check-in calls, or maybe I was just trying to convince myself of it. Every time she'd press a few dollars into my hand with a pitying look, every time she'd hurry away when she saw me pushing my cleaning cart down the hall, I'd tell myself that was the price of my anonymity. But there are limits, even to a mother's endurance. And Sophia, in her blindness, was about to cross that line. It all came to a head on a Tuesday afternoon, one of those crisp, clear days you only get in a New York autumn. I was in the main lobby of the VA Holdings building. Now, this place is a symphony of power. Italian marble floors so polished you can see your reflection, floor-to-ceiling glass walls looking out at the Manhattan skyline, and an air thick with the subtle scent of success and multi-million-dollar deals. Everything is hushed and grand, the only sound being the click-clack of high heels on the marble, like the ticking of an expensive watch. My job that day was simple, to polish the leaves of the giant philodendrons, their green leaves as big as fans, silently watching the powerful come and go. And then I saw her. Sophia emerged from one of the glass-walled conference rooms, and she was a sight to behold. She wore a perfectly tailored cream-colored suit, her blonde hair in an elegant chignon, and the red soles of her Louboutin heels were a splash of color against the white marble. She was walking with two men in Armani suits, a smile on her face that was both professional and distant. She was a queen in her kingdom. Her eyes swept across the lobby, and then they landed on me. Just for a second, but in that second, I saw it all. That professional smile froze. A flicker of annoyance, almost disgust, crossed her face. She quickly wrapped up her conversation with the men, shook their hands, and waited for them to step into the VIP elevator. The second those stainless steel doors slid shut, Sophia's perfect mask dropped, her face hardened. She strode toward me, her heels making angry, sharp sounds on the floor. "Mother," she hissed, her voice a powerful whisper. "How many times have I told you, don't linger in the main lobby when I have partners here?" I looked down at my hands, at the damp cloth I was holding. I slowly wiped one last speck of dust from a green leaf. "This is my work area, Sophia," I said, my voice calm. My calmness only seemed to make her angrier. "I don't care. You can clean the basement or the office floors upstairs. The main lobby is the face of this building. It's my face, and I don't want my partners knowing my mother is a janitor." She glanced around nervously, as if terrified someone might overhear our conversation, terrified for dreadful secret, the janitor mother would be exposed. To her, I wasn't a person. I was a stain on the perfect picture she was trying to paint. A sharp pain bloomed in my chest, a tired, familiar ache. I was used to being treated like a piece of old furniture, something you throw a sheet over when company comes. Sophia let out a long sigh, a sound of pure exasperation. She opened her Prada handbag, pulled out a neatly folded $100 bill. She didn't hand it to me. She stuffed it into the pocket of my uniform jacket, a gesture so full of condescension it felt like she was shooing away a beggar. "Here," she said, her voice a little softer now, but it was the softness of a master to a servant. "Go to the coffee shop on the corner. Get yourself something to eat. Just don't be here, at least until I'm gone. I have an important meeting with my partners." She didn't wait for a reply. She turned on her heel and walked away, her powerful, elegant posture back in place, leaving me standing there, alone, next to the philodendron. The smell of leaf polish, clean and bitter, hung in the air. I looked down at the $100 bill in my pocket. It wasn't money. It was the price of my silence, the price of her shame. What would Alexander, my late husband, say if he saw this? He who had always taught Sophia that a person's worth wasn't in their bank account, but in the kindness of their heart. He would be heartbroken. Maybe it was a blessing he went when he did, so he didn't have to see the stranger his beloved daughter had become. I put the bill away, not to spend, but as a reminder of the chasm growing between me and Sophia. I went back to my work, carefully wiping each leaf until it gleamed under the crystal chandeliers. But inside me, something had started to crack. A mother's patience may be infinite, but her self-respect is not. That day, I didn't take the private car service the company provides for its executives. I walked to the subway station, blending in with the river of New Yorkers. I sat on an orange plastic seat, listening to the screech of the wheels on the track, feeling the city's pulse. Here, I was just Vicky, one of millions of anonymous faces heading home after a long day. This anonymity used to be a comfort, but today it tasted like loneliness. I got home to my small apartment in Queens. This was my real world, a world away from the glitz of Manhattan. It wasn't large, but it was cozy, filled with old wooden furniture, faded Persian rugs, and walls covered in family photos. Alexander, beaming on our wedding day, a 5-year-old Sophia with pigtails and a missing tooth, summer vacations in Malibu. Every photo was a piece of a memory, a reminder of a time that was, a time when our family was whole. I made myself a cup of Earl Grey tea, the scent of bergamot calming my nerves. I sat in my favorite armchair, looking out the window. The sun was setting over the city, painting the distant skyscrapers in fiery shades of orange and red. And then the phone rang. It was Sophia. I knew it was her without even looking. The ring itself seemed to carry a sense of urgent demand. I took a deep breath and answered. "Mom?" Her voice came through the line, rushed without so much as a hello. "Listen to me. I don't have much time." I waited, silent. "The company's in a bit of a tight spot," she went on, trying to sound casual as if she were talking about the weather. "But I found a solution. There's an investment deal in Milan, a golden opportunity to take Vance Atelier to the next level. But I need capital, a lot of it, and I need it now." I knew she was lying. A business person can smell desperation a mile away. And I, who had swum with the sharks on Wall Street for 40 years, could smell a con from across a continent. But still, I said nothing. "So," she hesitated for just a second before delivering the next line with a calculated coolness. I sold the house in Malibu, and the classic Jaguar in the garage." The teacup in my hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. The house in Malibu? The Jaguar? No, they weren't just assets. They were what was left of Alexander, of our family. Memories came flooding back, as vivid as a home movie. The Malibu house. Alexander and I bought it with our very first bonus checks. We'd painted the white picket fence ourselves, planted the bright bougainvillea along the walkway. I could smell the Sunday morning pancakes he used to make, the scent of butter and maple syrup filling the air. I could hear Sophia's laughter, just 7 years old, as she ran down the beach with our golden retriever, her blonde hair flying in the Pacific breeze. It's where we threw her 16th birthday party. It's where Alexander taught her how to drive. Every corner of that house, every grain of sand on that beach was soaked in our memories. It wasn't a house. It was a museum of our love. And the Jaguar, a 1965 E-Type, British racing green. It was Alexander's baby. He spent years restoring it himself, lovingly polishing every piece of chrome, conditioning every inch of the leather interior. He called her his lady. On weekends, we'd drive down the Pacific Coast Highway with the top down, the salt air in our hair. The last time I was in that car was with him, just a few months before he was taken by a sudden heart attack. The scent of old leather and motor oil still lingered, as if he'd just stepped out for a moment. All of that, to Sophia, was now just a number in a bank account. "It's not like you were using them anyway." Her voice pulled me back to the present. The casualness in that statement cut deeper than any knife. Think of it as a loan. Once the Milan deal goes through, I promise I'll buy you another villa in the Hamptons, an even better one. The Hamptons. She didn't get it. It was never about the price tag or the location. It was about the soul. She had sold the very soul of our family. "Sophia," I tried to say, but she cut me off. "Gotta go. The plane is about to take off. I'll call you when I land. Love you." Click. The line went dead, but the screaming in my head had just begun. I set the teacup down. My hand wasn't shaking. It's funny, in my moments of greatest pain, I become my calmest. The grief didn't make me crumble. It sharpened me. I had cried all my tears when Alexander died. I had none left for this betrayal. Instead, a cold, terrifying clarity washed over me. A mother's heart, even one forged in steel, can still bleed. But the brain of a CEO, a strategist, was just getting started. Sophia thought she was on her way to a multi-million-dollar deal. She thought she was being clever, solving her problems. She had no idea she had just walked into the hardest test of her life, a test designed by me, her mother. I had given her everything, love, education, a head start. But I had forgotten to teach her the most important lesson of all, humility. I had forgotten to teach her that some things can't be bought, and some actions can never be easily forgiven. I sat there in my armchair, motionless, as the twilight swallowed the room. Outside my window, New York was lighting up, a carpet of glittering diamonds stretching to the horizon. This city, it never sleeps. And neither at that moment did my mind. It was running at full capacity, analyzing every word, every inflection in Sophia's voice. The deal in Milan, a golden opportunity. When it's a success, I'll buy you a new one. The words were like shards of broken glass, sparkling but sharp, and I knew that trying to piece them together would only make me bleed. But I am a mother, and a mother's heart, no matter how wounded, always keeps a small corner for hope, a foolish, stubborn little corner. Maybe she really was in trouble. Maybe Julian, the son-in-law I'd never fully trusted, had backed her into a corner. Maybe under that cold exterior, my daughter was scared and needed help. Hope. It's a dangerous drug. It dulls the pills, but it clouds the truth. And for the sake of that hope, for that silent maternal grace, I picked up the phone again. This time I called Antonio Bellini in Milan. Antonio is an old friend, a business partner from way back. He's an old wolf of the Italian fashion world, a man who can smell a good deal from a mile away. If Sophia really had a golden opportunity, Antonio would know about it, or at the very least, he could help her make it real. Pronto, Antonio's deep, gravelly voice answered. Antonio, it's Victoria, I said, my tone warm. Victoria, que sorpresa! What a pleasant surprise! It's been too long, my reclusive queen of Manhattan. I thought you had truly retired to knit sweaters for your grandchildren. I managed a small smile. Italian humor could always soften the sharpest edges. I have no grandchildren yet, Antonio, and I don't know how to knit. I'm calling because I need a favor. For you, anything, he replied instantly. That was the nature of the relationships I'd built. They were based on mutual respect and trust, not just numbers on a contract. My daughter, Sophia Vance, the CEO of Vance Atelier, she's in Milan, I began. She says she's there for an important deal, a major investment opportunity. You know how she is, still young and sometimes a bit impulsive. I was just hoping you could, as a friend, keep an eye on her. Maybe show some interest in her project. A few words of advice from a veteran like you might help her find her footing. I don't want to interfere directly, just a little guidance from afar. I chose my words carefully. I didn't ask him to spy, I asked him to guide. I was giving Sophia a chance, a path to prove me wrong, to prove my hope wasn't in vain. Antonio was quiet for a moment. I could hear the faint clink of a wine glass being set down on his end. Vance Atelier, Sophia Vance. The name is vaguely familiar, he mused. All right, Victoria, I understand. You want me to be a secret godfather. I will have my people look into this project and see if I can be of assistance. I will call you back. Thank you, Antonio. I owe you one. You owe me far more, cara mia, he chuckled and hung up. I let out a long breath. For the next few days, I tried to live a normal life. I went to the VA Holdings building, put on my gray-blue uniform, and pushed my cleaning cart down the marble hallways. I'd greet the young employees who smiled at good old Vicky, never knowing they were talking to the woman who signed their paychecks. The manual labor kept my mind busy, kept it from drifting into dark places. But in every quiet moment, the image of the Malibu house would return. I'd see myself walking on the beach at dawn, listening to the waves. I'd see Alexander on the porch, reading the Wall Street Journal with a cup of coffee. The memories were no longer a comfort. They had become ghosts, whispering of all that I had lost. 3 days later, Antonio called back. I was in the employee break room, eating my simple lunch, a sandwich and an apple, when my phone vibrated. I hurried out into the hallway to take the call. Victoria? Antonio's voice was missing its usual humor. There was a note of confusion in it, almost concern. I've had my people look into your daughter's business deal. My heart beat a little faster. And? There is nothing, he said bluntly. There is no deal. I have asked the most connected people in the fashion industry here. No one has heard of any negotiations or investment projects involving Vance Atelier. The name barely registers in Milan's business circles. The silence that followed was heavy. The last fragile bubble of hope inside me popped. Antonio continued, his voice hesitant. Actually, there is one thing. Your daughter's name and her husband Julian's did pop up, but not in the business pages. Where? I asked, my own voice turning cold. In the society pages, the celebrity gossip sites. There was a picture of them at a charity gala at Lit Como 2 nights ago. They looked very happy, more like they were on a luxurious vacation than a stressful business trip. A luxurious vacation, paid for with my memories, with the soul of my family. Thank you, Antonio, I said, my voice now devoid of all emotion. You've been a great help. Victoria, are you all right? I'm fine. I lied. I'm perfectly fine. I ended the call. The sandwich in my hand suddenly seemed tasteless. I wasn't hungry anymore. All I felt was a cold rage slowly building from the pit of my stomach. It wasn't a loud, screaming rage. It was quiet, sharp, and more dangerous than anything. The mother's heart had died. Now, only the CEO's brain remained. I didn't go back to the break room. I went straight to the service elevator, swiped my special key card, and rode it to the penthouse level. This was my real command center, a secret office known only to myself and Mr. Davies. It was the polar opposite of my apartment in Queens. Here, everything was high-tech. Walls covered in real-time stock market tickers, a powerful computer system, and a massive ebony desk overlooking the entire city. This was where Victoria Ashworth worked, not Vicky. I sat down in my leather chair and called Mr. Davies on the secure internal line. Davies, come to my penthouse office immediately and bring our top legal and forensic accounting teams with you. Less than 10 minutes later, Mr. Davies was there, followed by 2 serious-looking men in suits. They knew that when I called a meeting here, it was never good news. Madam Chairman, Mr. Davies said formally, I didn't waste a second. I want a full and completely discreet investigation, I ordered, my voice like a razor. The subjects, the CEO of Vance Atelier, Sophia Vance, and her husband, Julian Vance. I looked my team dead in the eye. I want a complete forensic audit of Vance Atelier's books for the past 5 years. I want every transaction, every invoice, every contract tracked. I want to know where every single dollar went. I want a detailed report on Julian Vance's personal cash flow, bank accounts, credit cards, investments, assets held in his name or in shell companies. I want to know where he's eaten, where he shopped, who he's talked to. The budget is unlimited. Leave no trace. I want the results on my desk in 48 hours. The 3 men nodded, not a single question asked. They knew my style. When I gave an order, their only job was to execute. They left, leaving me alone in the cold, Hummel silence of technology. I swiveled my chair to face the glass wall. New York was still there, glittering and indifferent. This city was built on ambition, but it was also a graveyard of broken dreams. I wondered, when did Sophia's dream die? Or was it never real to begin with, just an illusion created by Julian's vanity and greed? The next 48 hours were a waking nightmare. I didn't go home. I stayed in my penthouse office, living on black coffee and fury. Every few hours, Mr. Davies would bring up a new file, and every page was another hammer blow to what little trust I had left. The picture that emerged was worse than anything I could have imagined. Julian's plan wasn't just impulsive, it was a masterpiece of fraud, calculated down to the last detail. Mr. Davies stood before a large screen, presenting the team's findings with complex charts and cash flow diagrams. First, he began, pointing to a name on the screen, Apex Global Marketing, a corporation registered in Delaware 18 months ago. No office, no employees, just a P.O. box. The sole director, Julian Vance. He clicked a button and lines appeared, linking Apex Global Marketing to Vance Atelier. Over the last 18 months, Vance Atelier has signed 6 major contracts with Apex for services like brand consulting, digital marketing, and international public relations. The total value of these contracts exceeds $4 million. Were any of these services ever rendered? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Not a single one, Mr. Davies confirmed. We checked. No campaigns were launched, no articles were published. They were ghost invoices. Vance Atelier was paying real money for phantom services. $4 million, siphoned systematically from my own daughter's company. But that was just the beginning. Where did the money go? I asked. This is the clever part, Mr. Davies said, switching to another diagram. He didn't withdraw cash. He used the money from Apex to buy contemporary art through private auction houses in Switzerland. Then he quickly resold the art to collectors in Asia through another intermediary. The money was perfectly laundered. The final proceeds were wired to a bank account in the Cayman Islands, held by a trust whose sole beneficiary is Julian Vance. I closed my eyes. It was sophisticated. It was ruthless. Julian wasn't just a spendthrift. He was a professional criminal. And Sophia, I asked, the question I dreaded most. Did she know? Mr. Davies hesitated. He placed a binder on the desk in front of me. Her signature is on every contract with Apex. As CEO, she approved every one of these payments. I opened the binder. There it was, my daughter's familiar, flowing signature, confident and bold, right on the dotted line. She had signed her own company's death warrant. Was she a willing accomplice or just a foolish puppet in Julian's hands? Either way, I prayed it wasn't true. But maybe she was blinded by love and manipulation, believing Julian's promises of a global fashion empire. But foolishness, sometimes, is a sin that cannot be forgiven. There's more, Mr. Davies said, his voice grim. In the last 3 months, Julian used Vance Atelier's remaining credit to take out short-term loans from 7 different financial institutions, a total of nearly $2 million. He promised them the loans would be secured by the profits from the Milan deal. And there it was, the whole plan. Bleed the company from the inside, borrow from the outside, then create an excuse to disappear, the business trip to Milan. When he vanished, he would have millions in an offshore account, and he would leave Sophia with a hollowed-out company, drowning in debt, and facing a barrage of lawsuits from its creditors. And the money from the Malibu house, the money from the Jaguar, that was just the final bit of pocket change for his victory lap. Just then, a new email popped up on Mr. Davies' screen. The report from the team in Milan just came in, Madam Chairman. He opened the attachment. It was a detailed report, but I didn't need to read the words. The pictures said it all. Dozens of them. Sophia and Julian beaming on a balcony overlooking the Duomo. Julian wearing a brand new Patek Philippe watch. Sophia carrying a crocodile Birkin bag that I knew cost more than a car. Them dining at a 3-star Michelin restaurant, the food on their plates like works of art. Them raising glasses of crystal champagne glittering in the light. And in every single picture, Sophia looked happy, blissfully happy. She was living her dream, a dream built on lies and the betrayal of her own mother. I stared at one photo. Sophia, her head resting on Julian's shoulder, her eyes closed, a contented smile on her face. And in that moment, my decision was made. The pain inside me had crystallized, not into anger, but into a clear, cold purpose. I would not intervene. I would not call Sophia and expose Julian. I would not freeze his accounts. No, that would be too easy. That would make her a victim, and she would never learn her lesson. I would let this play out to its final bitter act. I would let Julian complete his plan. I would let my daughter, the child I loved more than life itself, fall all the way to the bottom. Because it's only at the bottom that you learn how to climb back up. It's only when you lose everything that you can finally understand the true value of what you once had. Davies, I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. Stop the investigation. Pull everyone back. Erase all our footprints. Mr. Davies looked at me, stunned. But, Madam Chairman, we can stop him. We can help your daughter. I don't want to stop him, I interrupted. Let them enjoy their vacation. What's coming will come. I turned my chair back to the glass wall. Below me, the city hummed along. People were fighting for their survival, for their dreams. My daughter was about to learn how to fight too, all by herself. The days following my decision passed in a kind of breathless silence. I had ordered my team to observe, and that's exactly what we did. From my penthouse office, I watched my daughter's personal tragedy unfold like a Greek god watching the mortals from Mount Olympus, at once powerless and all-powerful. The reports kept coming to my desk, but they were no longer dry financial figures. They were vivid snapshots of a life rotting from the inside. I saw Sophia and Julian's credit card statements, tens of thousands of dollars on designer clothes they would probably wear only once, extravagant dinners where a single bottle of wine cost more than my entire monthly salary as Vicky, nights spent in the presidential suites of Europe's finest hotels. They didn't just go to Milan. From there, it was Rome, then Paris, then Monaco. This wasn't a business trip. It was a victory tour, celebrated on the ashes of betrayal. I looked at the photos, trying to find a sign, a flicker of doubt in Sophia's smile, a shadow of worry in her eyes. But there was nothing. She was completely lost in the illusion Julian had created. She believed she deserved all of this, that this luxury was the reward for her business genius. Her own pride had become a veil, keeping her from seeing the cliff edge right at her feet. And then, just as I knew it would, that veil was torn away. The news came on a Monday morning. Mr. Davies's report was short. Julian Vance had not boarded the return flight to New York with his wife. He had disappeared from their Paris hotel the night before. Their joint bank account had been emptied. Sophia's credit cards had been declined. The play was over. The con man had taken the money and run. I felt no satisfaction, only a deep, heavy sadness. A sadness for my foolish girl who was about to wake up from a beautiful dream to a living nightmare. I gave her 1 day for the cold, hard reality to sink in, 1 day for her to realize she was abandoned, betrayed, and utterly alone. The next day, I decided to pay her a visit. I went as Vicky, the janitor mother, the only person left in the world she thought she could still turn to, even if only to lash out at. I cooked a pot of chicken soup from my own mother's recipe. It was the same thing I used to make for Sophia whenever she was sick as a little girl. A gesture of unconditional love, a reminder of a simpler, more honest past. I took the train to Soho, where she and Julian lived in a magnificent loft apartment. When the doorman, who knew me as Vicky the housekeeper, let me in, he gave me a look of pity. "Miss Vance doesn't seem to be doing too well, ma'am," he said quietly. When I stepped out of the private elevator into the apartment, I understood why. The place, which I had visited once before and found suffocating in its ostentatious luxury, now looked like a battlefield. Silk pillows were thrown across the floor. A shattered wine glass lay in a corner. And on the glass coffee table, dozens of letters were piled high, most of them bearing the frightening red stamps of collection agencies and law firms. And then I saw Sophia. She was sitting on the floor, slumped against an expensive Persian rug, her back to the velvet sofa. She was still in a silk nightgown, her beautiful blonde hair a tangled mess. Her face was pale, puffy from crying, and her blue eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. She was just staring at a wall, as if she were watching some private horror movie only she could see. Scattered around her were the papers, bank statements, collection notices, court summonses, the ashes of her fallen empire. I quietly placed the pot of soup on the granite countertop. "Sophia?" I called, softly. She jumped, startled, and turned to look at me. For a split second, I saw a flicker of raw weakness in her eyes, the vulnerability of a lost child. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a shield of anger. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice raspy. "I brought you some chicken soup," I said, keeping my voice gentle. I walked over and sat down on the floor next to her. I reached out, wanting to pull her into a hug, to comfort her like I had 1,000 times when she was just a little girl. And that's when her walls came crumbling down, but not in the way I'd hoped. She burst into heaving sobs, the gut-wrenching, heartbreaking cries of someone who has truly lost everything. I pulled her close and let her bury her head in my shoulder, her tears soaking the fabric of my janitor's uniform. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered. "It's all going to be okay. I'm here now." But my words of comfort seemed to be the trigger. She suddenly shoved me away, a push so hard and unexpected it caught me off guard. "Okay?" she shrieked, her voice cracking with pain and rage. "What do you know about okay? Look at this. Just look." She grabbed a handful of papers from the floor and threw them into the air. They fluttered down around us like snowflakes of despair. "I've lost everything," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "My husband, he's gone. He took all my money, the company's money. He left me with a mountain of debt. My company, Vance Atelier, it's going bankrupt. My reputation, everything I've built, it's all gone up in smoke. And you're telling me it's going to be okay?" She shot to her feet, pacing the room like a caged animal. "What can you do to help?" She spun toward me, her eyes filled with a new level of contempt. "Who can you call? Do you know anyone in finance? Can you write me a check for a few $1,000,000 to pay off my debts? No, you can't." She pointed a shaking finger at the pot of soup on the counter. "All you can do is cook a damn chicken soup. I don't need soup. Don't you get it? I need a miracle. I need a way out." Her words were knives, and this time they plunged straight into my heart, no hesitation. I knew she looked down on my job, but I never realized the contempt ran so deep that she saw me as utterly useless, a person with no value beyond simple domestic chores. To her, I wasn't just a social embarrassment, I was a practical one, a mother completely incapable of helping her in any way that mattered. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice from trembling. "Sophia, money isn't everything." "Oh, here we go with that lecture again," she laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "Easy for you to say. You've lived your whole life being poor. You're used to it. You don't know what it feels like to have it all and then lose it. You don't understand the pressure, the humiliation. You can't possibly understand how much money and status matter in this world. Once you lose it, they'll just see your daughter as an ant to be crushed under their feet. They will squash me." "Do you think I'm a burden to you?" I asked, a question I never thought I would have to say out loud. My question seemed to stop her in her tracks. A flash of confusion crossed her face before it was replaced by a blunt, cruel honesty. "Sometimes I did," she admitted, her voice a barely audible but crystal clear whisper. "I always had to worry about where you might show up, when. I had to explain to Julian's friends why a CEO's mother was a cleaning lady. I love you, but your life, It's just so different. It doesn't fit in my world. And there it was. It wasn't just contempt. It was rejection. She wasn't just ashamed of my job. She was ashamed of me. The cold calm I'd felt days before returned, stronger than ever. The pain was gone, replaced by a diamond-hard resolve. She needed to hit the absolute bottom. She needed to learn, in the hardest way possible, that the very things she saw as a burden were the only things that ever truly had value. I stood up, brushing the dust from my uniform pants. I looked at my daughter, not with the eyes of a wounded mother anymore, but with the eyes of a strategist assessing the field. "So what are you going to do now?" I asked, all the softness gone from my voice, replaced by pure, cold practicality. Sophia seemed to sense the shift in me. She stopped pacing and stared, her face still angry, but now tinged with confusion. "I don't know," she admitted. "Every bank has turned me down. No one will give me a loan. I tried calling a few investors, but the second they heard about Vance Atlier's financial situation, they hung up." "So you're out of options?" "No," she said, and for the first time I saw a familiar spark in her eye, the spark of a fighter. She was my daughter, after all. "There's one last hope, one single shot." "And what's that?" She took a deep breath. "VA Holdings," she said, the name hanging in the room like a prayer. "They're the only giant in this city with the power and the capital to rescue a company like mine. They're known for acquiring promising brands that are in trouble and restructuring them. If I can just convince them, Vance Atlier can be saved." I almost smiled, a bitter, ironic smile. She was running from the hurricane straight into its eye, and she had no idea. "That's a tall order," I said, my tone neutral. "Are they easy to get a meeting with?" "Not at all," Sophia shook her head. "They're famously private and difficult to reach. The chairman, he or she, is only known by the initials VA. No one knows their face. Everything goes through their CEO, a man named Davies. I've emailed him a dozen times. Finally, his assistant answered. I have a meeting, Friday morning. It's my only chance. I have to make it work." I nodded. "Then you should get ready. Take a shower, eat something, and get to work. You can't walk into the most important meeting of your life looking like this." My words seemed to pull her out of her panic. She looked down at her wrinkled nightgown, then back at me. There was still distance in her eyes, but something else, too. Maybe a grudging respect for my practicality. "You're right," she said. I went to the pot, ladled out a full bowl of soup. "Eat," I said, placing it on the table. "You need your strength, physical and mental." She sat down, and for the first time, she ate in silence. I stood there, watching her, a mother watching her child march off to the biggest battle of her life. A battle where she had no idea that her opponent, her potential savior, and her final judge were all the same person. Friday morning, I knew she'd be there, and I'd be there too. Not as Victoria Ashworth in the boardroom, but as Vicky, with my cleaning cart, in the perfect position to watch the final curtain fall. That Friday morning, the whole of New York City seemed to be holding its breath. The sky was a heavy, bruised gray, threatening rain, mirroring the tension building inside me. I'd arrived at the VA Holdings building early, not through the executive entrance in the basement, but through the main doors like any other employee. I wore my familiar gray-blue janitor's uniform, my silver hair tied neatly under a headscarf. To the world, I was Vicky, an invisible part of this massive machine. But today, my invisible role was the lead. I had set my stage perfectly. I told my supervisor I'd handle the cleaning for the main lobby and the 60th floor conference rooms, the floor reserved for the most important meetings, that morning. No one questioned it. Vicky was always a diligent and reliable worker. At 9:45, I saw her. Sophia stepped out of a yellow cab like a goddess emerging from a mortal chariot. She had completely transformed herself from the wreck I'd seen a few days prior. She wore a sharp, powerful black pencil dress by Alexander McQueen. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her face professionally made up to hide any trace of sleepless nights or shed tears. She carried a leather Hermes briefcase, inside which rested her last hope. She looked like a warrior, a CEO ready for battle. But I, her mother, could see the tiny cracks in that perfect facade. The tension in the way she gripped the handle of her briefcase, the flicker of desperation in her eyes as she looked up at my skyscraper of glass and steel, a symbol of the power she was so desperate to claim a piece of. She took a deep breath and pushed through the heavy revolving glass doors. As she entered the magnificent lobby, she paused to compose herself, to absorb the atmosphere of wealth and power. And that's when she saw me. I was there, right in the middle of the lobby, mopping a small smudge on the marble floor. I had chosen that spot deliberately. I wanted her to see me immediately. Her reaction was instant, but I registered every detail. Her carefully made-up face went pale, as if someone had just thrown a bucket of ice water on her. Her eyes widened in shock, then instantly flared with panic and utter mortification. She shot a quick glance around, checking to see if anyone was paying attention. Luckily for her, the lobby was mostly empty at this hour. She practically ran towards me, her steps and her high heels rushed and losing their usual grace. "Mother," she hissed, her voice a mixture of disbelief and fury. "What in God's name are you doing here?" I calmly straightened up, holding my mop like a scepter. "I'm working, Sophia."
"Working? Here? Now?" she whispered frantically, trying to keep her voice down. "Do you have any idea what day it is? I have a meeting here, the most important meeting of my entire life." "I know," I said, my voice even. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." That seemed to be the last straw. Sophia's composure shattered. "I'm not okay," she nearly shouted before catching herself. "And you're not helping. You're making everything worse. The only people who can help me now are VA, the powerful people who work in this building. You're a janitor. You wouldn't understand." Then came the look I knew so well, a look that was both pleading and demanding. "Please," she begged, "just go. Go somewhere out of sight. Don't ruin this for me. I'm begging you." I looked at my daughter. In that moment, I didn't see a powerful CEO. I saw a scared little girl, terrified of being found out, terrified that her mother's lowly origins would tarnish the perfect image she had worked so hard to build. I nodded slowly. "All right," I said, and I pushed my cleaning cart towards the service corridor, disappearing from her sight. But I didn't go far. I simply took a different path to the same destination, the 60th floor. Sophia, having removed the obstacle, straightened her dress, took another deep breath, and walked with restored confidence to the reception desk. I watched it all on a small security feed I had access to. Her meeting was at 10 o'clock. I was on the 60th floor long before then. This floor was another world. The silence here was almost absolute, broken only by the soft hum of the climate control. The wool carpet was so thick it swallowed every footstep. The walls were adorned with millions of dollars worth of contemporary art. The air smelled of money and power. I had told the supervisor there was a stubborn smudge on the window in Conference Room 1, the largest and most prestigious room where Sophia's meeting was scheduled. I needed extra time to work on it. It was the perfect excuse to be there. When Sophia and Mr. Davies' assistant walked in, I was on a small stepladder, my back to them, carefully polishing the massive pane of glass that overlooked the Manhattan skyline. I could feel my daughter's eyes burning into my back. I could feel her stress level skyrocket. But she said nothing. She didn't dare draw attention to it. The meeting began. Mr. Davies entered, followed by 2 other vice presidents. They were true sharks, men and women who could smell weakness from a block away. "Miss Vance," Mr. Davies said, his tone polite but cold, "we don't have much time. Please begin." I kept cleaning the window, but every one of my senses was focused on that table. I listened to Sophia's pitch. I had to admit, she was good. Her voice was clear and confident. She talked about the history of Vance Atelier, its brand potential, the temporary difficulties it was facing. She didn't blame Julian. She took the blame herself, calling it a mismanagement on my part. She laid out an ambitious restructuring plan and ended with her offer, a strategic investment from VA Holdings in exchange for a 40% stake in her company. When she finished, a heavy silence fell over the room. I could practically hear her heart pounding in her chest. And then the sharks began to circle. Mr. Davies was the first. "An interesting plan, Miss Vance," he said, flipping through the portfolio she had prepared. "But the numbers here tell a different story. We see a $4 million cash flow to a marketing firm called Apex Global. Can you explain this massive investment? What were the results?" Sophia blanched. That was part of our global expansion strategy. Another VP, a sharp woman named Chen, cut in. "Strategy? Our due diligence suggests Apex Global was a shell company. And that $4 million, along with another $2 million in short-term loans, seems to have disappeared along with your husband. That doesn't look like a management mistake. That looks like large-scale fraud. Why should we believe it won't happen again?" The meeting turned into an interrogation. They came at her from all sides, with sharp questions and undeniable figures. Sophia's professional mask began to crack. Her voice started to tremble. She tried to answer, but her explanations grew weaker, less convincing. She was drowning, and she knew it. That's when I made my move. I stepped down from the ladder and pushed my cleaning cart past the back of the conference table. I accidentally knocked a bottle of glass cleaner off the cart. Crash! The sound of shattering glass ripped through the quiet room, breaking the tension. Everyone jumped and turned to look. Sophia saw me, and it was the final straw. Her face flushed with a toxic mix of humiliation and anger. The failure of her pitch and the lowly presence of her mother combined into an uncontrollable rage. "Oh, for God's sake," she burst out, all composure gone. She shot up from her seat, knocking her own chair over. She didn't bother apologizing to the executives. She stormed straight over to me. "Mother," she roared, no longer whispering, "are you deaf?" I started to bend down to pick up the broken pieces. "I'm sorry, it slipped." "Enough," she cut me off, her voice bordering on hysterical. "You're not helping, you're just interrupting. Don't you get it? This is my last chance, and only VA, only these people can help me, not you." She turned to Mr. Davies and the VPs, her face pleading. "I am so sorry for this interruption. She's my mother. She didn't mean any harm. Please, let's continue." But it was too late. The drama had reached its climax. I straightened up slowly, looking my daughter dead in the eye. The shards of glass lay at my feet, glittering like crystal tears. "You say you need VA's help?" I asked, and my voice suddenly changed. It was no longer the soft, slightly timid voice of Vicky. It was the voice of Victoria Ashworth, a voice deep, clear, and filled with an authority that had silenced the most powerful men on Wall Street. Sophia froze, confused by my sudden transformation. "Yes, not you. Now will you please just leave?" I took one step toward her, and then another, until I was standing directly in front of her. I looked into her wide, bewildered blue eyes. "You're talking about VA," I said slowly, emphasizing each initial. "The one behind VA Holdings?"
I reached up and pulled off my headscarf. My neatly coiffed silver hair was revealed under the boardroom lights. "Because, Sophia," I said, a sad, ironic smile touching my lips. "VA stands for me, Victoria Ashworth." The room fell into an absolute deafening silence. Sophia just stared, her mouth hanging open, unable to form a word. Her brain seemed to have shut down, unable to process the impossible truth. And to confirm it, Mr. Davies, who had been watching the entire scene with quiet intensity, rose formally to his feet. He walked to my side and gave a respectful bow of his head. "Miss Vance, members of the board," he said, his voice echoing in the silent room. "It is my honor to introduce you to Mrs. Victoria Ashworth, the founder and anonymous chairman of VA Holdings." The curtain had fallen, the truth was out, the play was over. Or maybe it had only just truly begun. A silence fell over the boardroom. It wasn't a normal quiet. It was thick, heavy, so palpable I could feel its weight pressing down. Time seemed to stop. The entire universe shrank to that single moment. Me, my daughter, and the undeniable truth hanging in the air between us. Sophia's face was a canvas of chaos. The color drained from her skin, leaving it a ghostly, almost translucent white. Her blue eyes, which moments ago had been blazing with anger and desperation, were now blank, vacant. She stared at me, unblinking, as if trying to see through me, searching for some sign that this was a cruel joke, a nightmare from which she was about to wake. But she found nothing. Only her mother's face, a face she had seen 1,000 times, but one that was now utterly alien, imbued with a power she could never have imagined. "No, it can't be," she stammered, the words barely a whisper escaping her lips. She gave a tiny shake of her head, a feeble gesture of denial against a reality too staggering to bear. Mr. Davies and the 2 vice presidents stood frozen, silent witnesses to the family tragedy unfolding before them. I had briefed them that this was a possibility, but I'm sure the reality was more theatrical than they had ever prepared for. I said nothing. I just stood there, letting the truth sink in, letting its weight slowly crush the shell of pride Sophia had spent her entire life building. And then it shattered. Like a dam bursting, all the strength, the pride, the self-control Sophia had been clinging to just collapsed. Her knees buckled. She crumpled to the cold marble floor, not with a sound, but like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Sobs racked her body, no longer tears of anger, but the broken sounds of a complete and total breakdown. She crawled toward me, no longer a CEO, no longer a powerful woman. She was just a broken child, seeking salvation from the very person she had rejected. She grabbed the leg of my uniform pants, her beautiful face now a mess of tears and despair. "Mom," she cried, her voice a choked, incoherent mess. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't know. I... She couldn't finish, just repeating the apology over and over between sobs. I looked down at my daughter. A part of me, the mother's heart, wanted to kneel down with her, to hold her and tell her everything would be okay. But the other part, the Victoria Ashworth part, knew that would ruin everything. The lesson wasn't over. Forgiveness could not be that easy. "Please," she looked up at me, her swollen eyes pleading. "Please, save my company. I know you can now. I know you're VA. Please, just invest. Please save it. It's all I have left." Her words, even in her desperation, showed me she still didn't understand. She was still begging for money. She still thought a check could solve everything, could erase every mistake. I looked down at her, not with anger, but with a profound sadness, an almost bottomless disappointment. But only a few minutes ago, Sophia, I said, my voice cold and clear, each word like a drop of ice. You said I couldn't help you. You screamed at me in front of all these people that I was just a janitor, that I didn't understand, that I should get out of your way. It seems to me that I wasn't part of what you wanted to have left. I paused, letting her own words echo in her mind. You were half right, Sophia. Vicky the janitor, she really couldn't help you. All she could offer you was a bowl of chicken soup. But Victoria Ashworth can. I motioned for Sophia to stand. She scrambled to her feet, her hands still clinging to me like a lifeline. I looked directly into her tear-filled eyes, and I delivered my verdict. I will not be investing in Vance Atelier, I said. Her face went ashen. The last flicker of hope in her eyes died. No, please, Mom. I will be acquiring it, I continued, and I could see the confusion warring with fear on her face. But it's my company, my name, she stammered. I cut her off without mercy. It stopped being yours when you let a con man gut it from the inside and signed your name to fraudulent contracts. It stopped being yours when you sold our family's memories to finance a lie. Right now, it is a liability, a disgrace, and I am going to clean it up. I will acquire the company for the price of $1, I declared, and all of its debts will be absorbed by VA Holdings. The name Vance Atelier will be dissolved. It will be folded into one of our subsidiary brands. Sophia shook her head, fresh tears spilling. What about me? What will I do? This was the most important part of the lesson. The punishment was not for destruction. It was for reconstruction. You, Sophia, I said, looking deep into her shattered soul, if you want a future here, you will start over, from the very beginning. Not as a CEO, not as a director, not even as a designer. I paused, letting the harsh reality sink in. You will start as an unpaid intern in the design department. You will do the jobs you once looked down on. You will fetch coffee. You will organize fabric swatches. You will listen and learn from the young designers who, just a few weeks ago, worked for you. You will relearn the value of a single stitch, the value of a single dollar honestly earned, and most importantly, you will relearn the value of respect for others and for yourself. That is the only deal on the table, I concluded, my voice leaving no room for negotiation. Take it or leave it. You can take that $1 and walk out of my life for good. I looked at my daughter. I had given her a choice between a humiliation that could lead to salvation and a freedom that would lead to oblivion. The boardroom waited in silence for her answer. This was no longer a business negotiation. This was a judgment of the soul. Sophia stood there, trembling. I could see the war raging on her face. Her last ounce of pride was battling her instinct for survival. She looked at me, then at Mr. Davies, then out the window at the Manhattan skyline, the world she had once belonged to and was now about to lose. After what felt like an eternity, she nodded, a barely perceptible nod. I accept, she said, her voice broken. I gave a single sharp nod in return. Mr. Davies, see to the paperwork. This meeting is adjourned. I turned without a backward glance at my daughter. I walked toward the door, leaving her to stand alone in the wreckage of her life. As I passed by, I bent down and picked up my janitor's headscarf from the floor. I still needed it. Vicky's role may have been over, but Victoria Ashworth's was only just beginning. A few weeks later, life had found a new, strange rhythm. Vance Atelier was officially a part of VA Holdings. The building was the same, but its soul had shifted. And so had Sophia. The final scene of this drama didn't play out in a lavish boardroom, but in a noisy, cluttered design studio on a lower floor of the building. The air here was filled with the smell of fabric, the whir of sewing machines, and the chatter of young designers. And there was Sophia. She was dressed in a simple white shirt and jeans, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. No expensive jewelry, no perfect makeup. Her face looked tired, but her eyes weren't empty anymore. They were focused. She was carefully organizing bolts of silk by color, a tedious job she would have once assigned to her lowest-level assistant. I walked in, not in my uniform, but in the attire of Victoria Ashworth, a dark, powerful suit. Everyone in the room looked up, and the hush fell as they recognized me. They all knew the story, or at least the version of it that had circulated through the company grapevine. I didn't look at Sophia. I walked directly to the new head of the department, a talented young designer I had handpicked. We discussed the new collection. When our conversation was over, I turned to leave. As I walked past Sophia's station, I paused. She looked up at me, her eyes a mixture of fear and respect. I said nothing. I simply placed a thick binder on the workbench next to her. "After you're done with the coffee run," I said, my tone casual as if speaking to any other intern. "Read through this and give me a summary, as soon as possible. Leave it on Mr. Davies' desk." I didn't wait for her reply. I walked away, leaving her there, alone, with the binder and her first assignment on the long road to redemption. As I stepped out of the design studio, I glanced back over my shoulder. I saw Sophia staring at the binder. Then she took a deep breath and began to read. "They say you have to tear something down to build it back better. I let my daughter lose a company so she could find herself. Because the greatest legacy a mother can leave isn't an empire of gold and silver. It's a person forged in steel, strong enough to build an empire of her own on a foundation of integrity."